I want to thank Linda Hunsicker, the Community Development Block Grant Program Specialist with the Kansas Department of Commerce. And Linda is going to tell us about Community Development Block Grants, or CDBG, housing grants that can help your community. Thanks, Linda, for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm Linda Hunsicker, as she said. I have been with the state a little over 20 years now. And before I did that, I was at Northwest Kansas Planning. So I recognize many of you that have joined the call. And Carol, you could probably give this presentation as well as I could with your experience in housing. So I did administration work, and then I've been with the state. Most of the time, I was out in Western Kansas and served Western Kansas with CDBG. But now I do all the monitoring of the projects that we do, as well as I'm the housing person, as well as the environmental specialist person. So those are the things that I am directly involved in, as well as monitoring all the CDBG projects. So I have probably met many of you on the road as I come out to monitor your project. I'm going to specifically talk about the CDBG housing and what it's like and how you get involved in it. So if we can go on to the next slide, I'll talk about how you first get started into housing if you're interested in a CDBG project. We have created a housing assessment tool between the partners that we have in Kansas. It's developed so that if you're a small city and do not have money or resources to hire a consultant to come in and do a housing assessment of your community, this allows you as a small community or a larger community, if you just want to do your own, to do your own assessment of your housing. The product we call a HAT. It's in 4 parts. Part 1 is the stakeholders and organization. Part 2 is demographics. Part 3 is past actions and current infrastructure. And then the final one is, of course, to analyze the data that you found in there. So you can go on to the next slide. After you complete a HAT, and basically the HAT, like I said, is something that you do and complete with stakeholders in your community. So you go through that, and you can always reach out to me if you want additional information. I'm trying to keep it short so that we have time for questions at the end. So after you complete the housing assessment tool, you can come to a HIAC, is what we call it. It's the Housing Interagency Advisory Committee, and it's created to provide guidance and assist communities. For CDBG, HIAC it's not required, but you would lose 5 points if you do not attend. I think after people complete the HAT, they're not excited about doing it sometimes, but I've never had a community yet that said, I wish you would not make me do that. They've always thought that it gave them a better understanding. So with all the agencies out there, we have Commerce, which is myself, Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, USDA Rural Development, and Federal Home Loan Bank. This provides you the opportunity to come in and talk to all these agencies together without forcing you to go to Commerce to see what their programs are and then go to the other agencies to do their program, which could take an hour or a day, to go to all agencies to see what housing programs are there. So we designed it so that you as a community can come in to Topeka or do it video conferencing and meet with all these agencies in a couple hours and learn about the program. So we can go on to the next slide. Like I said, the community completes the housing, submits the HAT, or completes the HAT. The HAT is submitted with a HAT profile 2 weeks prior to the meeting date, and that's how you get into the meeting. The meeting dates there's a schedule of what we have for 2020. So once that's submitted 2 weeks ahead of any of these dates, then and it's submitted to me, I schedule based on your preferences. You can come to Topeka and meet with us all there. or we've set up video conferencing through USDA Rural Development, has a very nice system that they share with us so that you can either go to Hayes, Iola, or Newton and video conference into Topeka. So that saves miles and time, and people seem to enjoy that as well. So that's an option. The profile that you submit to me along with the hat will give me the preference, and we can't always promise that your first preference will be that we can do, but we do the best we can, and you number them 1 through 4, what your preferences are, and we try to accommodate that preference. A community member must attend, so you cannot just send if you have an administrator, grant administrator, or someone like that. At least one community member, and hopefully several will be able to attend the meeting. You have the meeting dates, so you just don't know what time until 2 weeks prior, because I have to wait till I get all requests in, and then I schedule it and try to let you know if I'm in and can get it done the next day, so you can let your people know. We can go on to talk about.
Linda, can I ask a question? So
Sure.
I'm feeling a little bit vague. What you're saying is that these are well enough attended that they may not get their preference of where to attend it?
Actually, we didn't have very many last year. It's kind of a new thing within the last 5 years. So I think people get into stumbling blocks. So what I'm saying is that the only time you probably wouldn't get your preference is if something happened with that particular system, or else maybe we got full that time and you would have to wait till the next meeting schedule, which has never, I don't remember that's ever happened.
Okay. Okay.
It might happen.
Thanks. And they can, alternatively, they can go to Hayes, Iola, Newton, or Topeka for a live, to watch live from there.
Yeah, they actually just come in. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you what the typical meeting is. They would go to where they're, based upon the preferences, hopefully. They will go in, the community members will come in. The meeting is scheduled for an hour and a half. The community makes a presentation about their hat and how they did the hat, how they completed the hat, what they found. So it's just kind of a public presentation of their hat process and the hat that we have in paper form. And after that half-hour presentation, that gives us, the agencies, about an hour. Sometimes it goes over, sometimes it's a little shorter, depending on the knowledge of the community. But we'll talk about their hat, if we felt like they did a good process, if they need to go back and review things, if they need to update their demographics or whatever. We'll talk about the programs that we have. Each agency will talk about their programs, so you have a good, clear, you don't have a good, clear knowledge, I shouldn't say that, but you have a brief synopsis of the programs out there. You've been able to meet the people either in person or over the video conferencing. And so you at least see the faces and know the programs. And later on, I'll show you a website that you can go to learn more about the programs as well. But then we can then look at the hat and say, okay, if the hat presenters or the community through the hat discovered they just need new construction, then the other agencies can say, based upon your hat, this is a program we really feel like that you need to look into. Because if it was new construction, I would tell them we have the CDBG program, but we're not allowed by HUD requirements to do new construction. So if that's what you need, I'm not a resource for you until you get the new housing done, and you might need rehab at that point in time. So it's just a good way for us to take their hat, their personalities, what they need in their community, and then respond back in a very direct way. So that's how the hat works, or the HIAC works. No, you're fine. You can go on to the next slide. This is a new thing that we're trying. This is going to be the first year for what we're going to call a pre-hat HIAC, for lack of a better term. Basically, we had a community come in to one of the agencies to talk about housing. And we thought, well, they kind of missed out on the rest of us. So we created what we're calling a pre-hat profile. I did look online, and it's not online yet. but we're working on it, and I have drafted out what it's going to look like. And so if you don't want to do a hat right now or don't feel like you're ready to complete that type of process, then you can submit a pre-hat profile to me, the same schedule, 2 weeks before the HIAC meeting, and you'll be scheduled for the next HIAC meeting with the same principle, except your meeting will just be an hour, because basically then you don't have a hat ready. So we're basically, as agencies, just explaining our housing programs to you so that you can take those back to your community and say, okay, because if you're going to do it with another agency or another program, a hat isn't required. Some programs like a hat just so that they have a better knowledge of your community and what your needs are. But CDBG is the only program, unless somebody's changed something, that a hat is required. But this gives you the opportunity then to come in, learn about each of the programs, and allow you to ask questions of each of us in one setting for 1 hour instead of spending the whole day going around and setting up appointments with each one individually. So not that we aren't willing to meet with each one individually, but this gives you a better one-stop shop, I guess is a good way to put it. For the forms that I had mentioned, the profile, the hat, those type of things, that can be found at this website. I know you probably don't have time to write it down, but it's, as Nancy said, it's going to be online, so you can go back and record it, type it in to your browser and come up with the sites. And so that's our housing website, and that'll give you all the forms, and also gives you a sample of our application, so you can, at last year's application anyway, so you can see kind of what it looks like. So hopefully that website will help you. Now, what is CDBG actually? What can CDBG housing do? I already told you we cannot do new construction. That's not our decision. That's by regulation from HUD. So to be eligible, all projects must meet LMI typically, but also demolition can be done as slum and blight. The project activities must meet a national objective. The community needs to be eligible as well as have an eligible activity. All costs must be reasonable, and I'll go into some maximums here a little bit later on in the slide. We're not involved in remodeling. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to bring the home up to 20 years of use, add 20 years of life to the home. So what we're looking at doing with our program is not remodeling because you don't like the green shag carpet that's been there forever. It's about plumbing, electrical, those type of health and safety type of issues. So that's what we're looking at. The housing rehabilitation can be done for homeowners. I say grants under cost for each property is $25,000. That's because of lead-based paint requirements. If you go over $25,000, which you can do, you have to abate the whole house. That can become very, very expensive. So most of our communities have chosen just to do rehab under the $25,000 for each property because of that lead-based paint requirement. So homeowner rehab is eligible. The homeowner must be low to moderate income. That meets our national objective. Rental rehab can also be done. The tenant must be LMI. So the person living in that must meet the LMI requirement to be low to moderate income. Also, that can be found on our website. What is LMI? What does it mean? What does income limits are? What the income limits are. The landlord, if they're not LMI, must contribute 25% of the rehab cost. So what the bids come in as, the landlord must pay 25% of that rehab cost. If they're non-LMI, or if they're LMI, they should be making money then off that rental. So for a long time, we didn't have them contribute anything. and then there was no buy-in. There was no, what we found was they didn't take care of the properties after we left as well. So we then put in a contribution of 15%. If they are LMI, they still are making money off of it. So we feel like they should at least contribute to 15% of the rehab cost. You can also do both rehabs in one grant application, but you can also add demolition to that. Because if we rehab homes on each side of a really bad home that needs to come down, we're not really maximizing our dollars, we don't feel. So we want to add demolition in there, which can be done as slum and blight, and take out any properties that are dilapidated. I told you I was going to bring in the maximum amount. Each grant, now there may be some changes. This is the way it stands now. I'm proposing to make some changes to add another area, but this, I don't know if that's going to happen, so I will just specifically talk about what the program is at this point in time, which is a maximum. And if we have time later, I'll share with you what we're proposing. Right now, the total grant is $300,000. That must also include administration. Your program must have an administrator. Maybe you have a city person do that administration, and then there wouldn't be any cost. But if you do hire an administrator, we allow $25,000 to do that. If it's under, the grant is under less than the $300,000, it's $20,000 is allowed for administration. You do not have to be a certified administrator to administer the CDBG grants anymore. However, we still keep a list of administrators that are interested in our program, and that is not part of the website that I presented to you, but it is on the CDBG Commerce website. And if you need that, you can sure email me or give me a call or something, and I can get that for you. The past year, we've added radon inspections. HUD has been wanting us to do radon inspections and remediate that as well. So this is the first year we've tried it. It's becoming a little bit more expensive than we had hoped, but we do require it now. So the maximum inspection is $1,000. For those of you who do not know what a risk assessment is, it's for lead-based paint. Basically, the risk assessor will come in and bring their little gun and test the paint in the house to tell us if it has lead in it. So we know that we need to remediate that by we choose to not do abatement. We just cover the lead-based paint to encapsulate it, is the way we handle that. But you have to assess it to know where the lead is. So the lead assessment is $1,000 maximum. Then we have to also do lead-based paint clearance testing of the contractor to make sure that he did not spread lead-based paint, and that the house is clear of lead-based paint, dust and things like that in the home. So testing for that is $300,000 maximum. And the next slide, I'll talk to you about the lead safe work practices. That's what that LSWP, lead safe work practices and cleaning for clearance. That's paid to the contractor to help him pay for his HEPA vac and things that he needs to do to pass clearance. And then there's temporary relocation. If you have a family with youngsters or a woman who is pregnant, we can temporarily relocate them to make sure that they are not exposed to lead-based paint during those times. Typically, that has not been a problem. The contractors have been very good about following the requirements, so we do not have to expend that cost, but we do allow $500,000 per grant in case you do need to temporarily relocate someone to a hotel or something like that, or another property that's clear of lead-based paint, for a temporary time during rehabilitation. The demolition inspection fee is $500, so they can go in and inspect to make sure. We don't want to tear down anything that's viable, so we want to make sure that that home cannot be saved at a reasonable cost, and then check for septic tanks and things like that, so we can remove the structure and leave it in a place where it's ready for additional housing or some type of activity on that lot. Maximum minimum spent for rehabilitation and demolition must be reasonable, and that's, you know, kind of how we go with the demolition. How reasonable is it? So who would apply and why would they not apply? Who applies? They have a housing need and they want to do something about it. So that's really simple, really, you know, direct. I'm going through this very quickly. I didn't realize when I was putting this together, I took out a lot of slides because I thought I'd run over the time. So anyway, we'll have plenty of time for questions. So why would you not apply, or why not? Those that didn't want to complete a HAT wouldn't, like I said, you're eligible, but you lose 5 points. So it's probably highly likely that you would not get funded. Another problem that we've had across the state, and this is a big problem, and trust me, I don't know how to solve it, because I've had many conversations with many people, and it's just a problem. We don't have a lot of inspectors and risk assessors out there. So typically, we've had SCID out of Wichita and North Central Regional Planning Commission, through their weatherization programs, have been able to expand and do this type of activity for us. Outside of the people that work in weatherization, we really haven't found anybody that has the means to buy one of the guns and maintain it to do the risk assessment and check the paint, which we can work around that because those agencies have been willing to travel for us for the most part. So that is easier fix than the contractor. Maybe you know, or maybe you don't know, that all contractors working out in the state of Kansas are supposed to have their lead safe work practices training. The firm is supposed to be registered as a lead firm, or lead abatement, not a lead abatement. That's left me, but they have to be registered with the state, and basically that's just paying a fee to say that we are a contracting firm that has all of our trainings and all of our requirements for lead-based paint. And those there's contractors are few and far between. And if you look in your city, you will see probably that there's very few that have that training, even though it's required by law. And so we don't have contractors. And if somebody has a way to fix it, I would love to hear from you, because that really is there's reasons why outside of those two areas to the central part of Kansas that we can find contractors that'll come bid on our program, bid on this program. And I tell them that this is a program that you get paid in. We're a state agency. We're going to pay the people in a very timely fashion. Usually once they're done, they can get paid in 10 days or sometimes less. That's on the norm. So that's a pretty good turnaround for your pay once you complete a rehab in a house, but that hasn't seemed to help either. So encourage your contractors in your communities, if you're looking at doing housing or you need housing, to get that training. It's just real important, because we have not been able to. There are projects in areas that are great projects. We would love to do them, but they don't have contractors. And until I tried to do that one time with a community that had a good project, and they said, we have local contractors that said they're interested and will do it. And they did all the training, they paid for the training, they had a supper, and none of those contractors came back to the table to help with their project. So they had contractors that was, through begging, agreed to travel, I don't know, 200 miles. I don't know if that's correct, but somewhere around that, to help this community out to get the project done. But that's probably not going to happen again, because that really reduced, there's not a lot of margins in our rehab anyway for profit. So that pretty much ate into their profit, and that's not going to happen. So when you're starting this process, you're going to have to make sure you've got some local contractors that already have the training, not that they will get it later, because getting it later that just doesn't happen, as we found out when we tried that. So on the next slide, you'll find a housing resource site. We have a community of all the housing people, basically the agencies that I told you about before. We get together on a quarterly basis and talk about housing, try to solve contractor issues. That's a topic every every meeting about the contractors because we all have the same issue. But so we do that. So this is the top one is a site that we created that we could actually say and talk to people and hand out. I just went in and checked that site this morning. We were having trouble with that site, and this morning it still gave me an error message. So I've sent an email, have somebody to fix that or try to fix it, but that happens quite frequently. So I'm giving you a longer website that you can use that has not failed me yet. It's an addition of our commerce website. They put it on there as well. So, but this is a really good site because it tells you, I really encourage you if you have housing needs to visit this site. We all work together on it. We update it yearly with all the programs that all agencies have that I know that, and if there's an agency out there that also has money for housing, let me know, and we're more than welcome to, we're more than happy to add you to this housing resources site, because this is a site when somebody wants something for housing, whether it be a developer or a private individual, we can use this site because it has all the funding programs that I know of out there on one site. So feel free to visit that site, and it's broken out to what can a developer apply for, what can a city or county apply for, what can an individual apply for. I think there's one other piece to it that doesn't come to me right now, but it's really a useful site to know about the housing program. And I guess I went through that really fast. So hopefully there'll be questions and I can clear up anything for you. And this is my phone number and email address. If you have additional questions that maybe does not come to you today, but at a later time, or maybe it's like, I'm not ready for housing right now, but I know in the future I need something, hopefully I'll still be here, and you can contact me. And if not, there's a Kansas Commerce website, so you can still go into the CDBG program and find that information. That was our CDBG. We also have commercial rehab where we can do buildings downtown for code enforcement. If a business wants to go in a building, but there's issues with the brick or something, the heating, the air, the electrical, but it has to be code violations. We have an urgent need that I hope you never need, because that means you had a natural disaster, that you had a tornado come through town or something like that. But if a tornado comes down and it takes away your wells or your water wells, buildings and things, we can come in and do that. Then we also have our regular, which you're probably most familiar with, is our regular program, which is water, sewer, most kinds of community improvement. And then we also have our economic development program that we would love for you to use if you have a business coming to town that needs some loan money. It's granted to the community and loaned to the business. So hope I haven't forgot anything, because that was off the top of my head. And Debbie, I know you're on too, so if I did forget something, maybe you can chime me, because I think I have forgot something. You just can't think what it is right now. So that's it for me.
Well, Linda, that was amazing. And while people are thinking of their questions, I hope you will unmute your phone and tell us, or your monitor, and tell us what questions you have. I said it in the email, but it was just amazing to me when I mentioned to Debbie Beck. I said, Debbie, every single community I've ever been in has had housing issues. Surely that's a very competitive process. And her response just floored me. And that is, there is more money that we have every year than is requested. So it would be my goal to make that a competitive process, so that the communities are actually coming to you, because that's when things change.
And that's why I was so anxious to do this for you, because I want that too.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So we'll give you a moment to buzz in and tell us what your questions are for Linda.
Nancy, this is Randy Collett.
Hi, Randy.
Linda, are there Are there deadlines for the applications once the hat is completed? I mean, is there an application schedule out there that's a certain time of the year?
We have not finalized it for 2021, which would be the funding year we would be in. We just awarded 2020s, and that's what I was out earlier in the week doing, handing out contracts and doing sessions with our new grantees. But typically housing is due the end of August, and we'll have application workshops sometime in April. Those will be advertised as well as put in the newsletter that we will have going out. Every community should get that newsletter. If you would like to get that newsletter, you can call in 296-3004, and Sandy will probably answer the question, and Sandy Votaw, our secretary, would be more than happy to add you to that list to make sure that you get our newsletter every year. It'll have who our new awardees are, which is still on our website, and it'll have the dates of those meetings as well. And so those are still being finalized. Those are it's about the mid-April is what we're looking at. And then the housing deadline is usually the end of August.
Okay, thank you.
So Linda, if there is, I heard you say that they should call in at 296-3004. If there's an email or other way that they could also get signed up for that newsletter, would you let me know, and I'll put it out to everybody?
Okay, because they can contact any of us or me, and I will share it with Sandy as well. But
okay,
yeah, we'll always share information back and forth, but I will sure get her email address to you so that you can put that on as well.
Okay,
But
great.
we would like everybody to have a letter that wants it and that would think it would be helpful to their community or their program or just for information.
Right.
Maybe I missed this, but how long is a hat good for? How often does a community need to redo one?
That kind of depends on the community and if they've had something happen. There is really probably what we say is after 5 years, you need to revisit it at least. If you would have something like a large manufacturing or any kind of company leave your town, that's obviously going to change your housing. So then you would need to revisit the hat and see what's changed by that closure. But typically we kind of say 5 years, and then housing in Kansas and our communities in Kansas don't change that a lot, even in 5 years. So we ask you just to revisit the hat and see. You may have to do some more assessment of your properties because if you haven't done anything, there's probably properties that was rentals or that was vacant, and you may have more dilapidation than you did 5 years prior. But we don't change that much in Kansas, so I started out 2 years, then I went to 5 years, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Thank you.
Hope that answers your question.
Good question, Nadine. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I don't know whether, again, I've got a feeling it was the housing issue that brought people here today, but this was a very large turnout of 36 people on the call. Linda, thank you so much for your information and your knowledge and your accessibility and your flexibility to join us at the last second. So I'm going to open the call. I forgot to warn you at the beginning, but if you have anything that you want to share with 30 other people who are here listening, opportunities that you're about to present to the state and you want us to know about, why, let us know. You'll have to unmute your own phones.
You have a quiet.
What's that?
You have a quiet group.
Yes, yes. This is something we're trying to get in the habit of doing because I know people have things to share, but we're having a hard time getting it started, it seems like. Well, if you think of anything, feel free to forward it to me before I send out the call. And I'm going to leave you with a thought for the day. I always leave you with a thought for the day. And today's, excuse me, I forgot to tell you who our next speaker is. Our next speaker next month on the first Friday in March is Ben Winchester. Ben spoke with us last year in March, and he has done more than 20 years of research on the demographics of rural communities. One of his things that he told us about last year was the fact that we all know about brain drain. That's when our kids go off to college and they don't ever come back. But a thing that's happened routinely and quietly since the 70s, which is, by the way, 50 years ago, is that people choose to live rural. And they bring back with them resources and knowledge and wisdom. And we need to take advantage of that. But next month, he's going to give us part 2 of that, which follows Linda's very well. And it's baby boomers and the rural housing supply. Ben would like us to think about what kinds of new houses that we build and how we can encourage baby boomers to get out of those big houses so that other people who want 4 bedrooms can have them. So be sure and allocate the whole 60 minutes to that. Ben's got a lot to talk about and he talks fast, lots to share. So I'm going to leave you with this thought for today in terms of whatever you see in your community today. I'm so encouraged that all of you are here to think of a new vision of your community. And Steve Radley's dad is fond of saying, if you chase your dreams, sometimes you'll catch them. Thanks, and have a great Friday and weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.